I don't think. Hey.
Oh, yep. Yay.
All right. I don't know if anyone's here yet or if it's caught up. We'll just keep rambling for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And welcome to Space Sirens Book Club,
Yay.
Ancillary Justice Edition.
Woo.
Oh, 3 people are here. Hi, 3 people.
Oh, yay. I bet Stephanie, Marlene might be 2 of them.
She might come by.
Okay, there we go. Have we identified our audience?
Well, it was funny when we did reading sprints on Friday, and Kayla and I were like spoiler-free chatting about the book, and he's like, "You gotta save it for the book club." It's like, we have more people here right now.
Yeah.
So technically, Carrie's the host. I'm just in this box because I logged in. So I'll pass it over.
I'm sorry. I was halfway through a row.
We are also having crafting time.
Yes, except for me. I really should be doing something. But...
Well, yeah.
Oh,
and
Brett's here. Different person.
Yay.
Hi, Brett.
Hello.
Yeah, slightly not able to concentrate on more than one thing at once at the moment. So I'm putting the knitting down so that I can focus on the conversation. So I think just a little thing I wanted to say before we start is that I'm bad at pronunciations, and as far as I'm aware, there's no pronunciation guide for any of the names in this book, so we'll probably mash them up. And we may pronounce the same names different ways. And the second thing is, one of the things we're going to talk about is the portrayal of gender in the book, but for the majority of characters, the majority of the time, they were all referred to in female pronouns. So that's what I tend to do when talking about this book, but we might use other pronouns as well. And I just thought we'd start by saying that if it gets confusing, not all the characters are female, we just use female pronouns, and we'll talk about that a bit more.
Carrie loves this book too. Carrie's in charge.
Yeah. Let's start with that. Let's start with how we all felt about the book. So this was one that we didn't put it to a poll. We just decided that we were going to read it. I'd already read it and loved it, so I was kind of quite advocating for it, and I really enjoyed rereading it. Enjoyed it as much. It's sometimes a worry when you reread something that you're not going to love as much, and I did. I loved it just as much on the reread, so that was really good.
Yay. That's good.
Nice. It'd been on my list to get to for a long time. I mean, it's always at the bookstore, won a Hugo. And then when Carrie said that when we read Nine Fox Gambit last fall for book club, that it reminded her in terms of like the world building and how it's executed, I'm like, ooh, I do love that type of thing. And so I was really excited. So I was also on board with nobody gets a say in it. We're just reading this book. So I was excited. I think I landed on like a 3-star rating, which for me means it's definitely a good book, but it was in terms of pleasure, because I rate a lot on emotion and like how did I feel while reading it, less on the like, I mean, I still put into account like the craft of it and what was objectively like good or bad, but a lot of this was really hard for me to read, like in terms of like being engaged and caring, I guess, which sounds so harsh, but like that really was a lot of my issue of like, objectively, this is a cool scene. I understand that this is supposed to make me very stressed or tense or whatever. Like I see it, but man, am I apathetic and I do not care. That was a lot of my issue. Not so much that I thought, like I wasn't thinking the author should have done this instead or anything like that. It wasn't one of those. So it's about where I come from it with. Kayla, you want to go?
Yeah. So this one was weird. Like, I think I also am in that 3 to 3.5 star range. And it's one of those things where it's like, I enjoyed parts of it quite a bit, but then there was something just holding me back from like really loving it. And it was like, yeah, like this weird disconnect of like, I think I like it, but I also don't. And that's very hard to explain, but I think Angela was kind of, similar thoughts. And I think Stephanie down here in the comments is kind of where I'm at as well. I think it had a lot of really interesting ideas. I don't know that I loved the dual timeline at first necessarily. And, obviously that kind of moves on after a bit, but then I was like, I don't know if I like that either. So I'm very confused with how I feel about this book. I think it was doing a lot of interesting ideas, and I'm glad that we did read it for book club because I think it's yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of interesting things to discuss. And it's been one, like, exactly what Angela said. I've seen it in the bookstore for forever and have been like, okay, I've heard so many things about this, particularly with like the gender thing where everybody's, referred to as female. And, we've got this like ship person thing situation. And so I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to know what's going on here, but I also don't know how much I loved the execution of it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Basically, I don't know how I feel about this book.
Well, before we get to Judith, Marlene also had it was not on their radar, and like 4 or 5, or is that 4.5? Not sure, but still a very good rating. Well, it's a comma, so I don't know.
Well, I think non-American
they use commas.
Yeah.
Okay, but math is the same across the world. A decimal point means half. I don't understand this. Okay, that's wrong. I'm sorry. That's a list. Math is not different.
It is in Europe, I'm afraid. Not in the UK. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
I think America's in the wrong for using the math system we use for like Fahrenheit and feet and everything else. And you guys need to all agree that 4.5 is not the same as 4.5. That is wrong.
No, in the UK, we use decimal points, but in Western Europe. Anyway, I'm not talking too much about maths. Judith, what did you think of it?
I think I landed very similarly. Basically, I had heard of this because my wife, Katie, read it and loved it because Katie loves anything that has AI in it. And if that AI can be gay, she's like, right, let's go. So she was really keen for me to read it. But I think I disappointed her a little bit, being like, I'm very confused. And in fairness, read it the same week as Horizon Forbidden West came out, and that's all I wanted to do. And I was like chugging along to finish the book while secretly being like, I just want to shoot arrows at robots. So that may be my own fault. I think it's one that I'm really keen to read the other books, which I don't think would have happened if I didn't like this first book. It feels like the first book of a series, and I am told by many that it I don't know if improves is the right word, but the other 2 books build on it in a really interesting way. That was my kind of closing thought. But most of the time, as with almost all sci-fi, the first time I read it, I was deeply confused. I couldn't really work out what was happening until the end. Which, may be intentional.
Yeah, and the things you said are things that I've heard other people say. So I first read this book as part of a readathon I thought it was 2018, it was actually 2019, longer ago than I remembered. And the other people that read there were 4 options for group books, and this was one of them. And the other people that read this book said similar things of either they found it too confusing, particularly with the timelines, or they didn't find Breck very relatable as a protagonist and a point of view character. And that, for me, I really love Breck. Like, I find her really relatable. I don't know what that says about me. The things I love about this, like, I love anything with AI in it, particularly an AI in a position that you wouldn't expect an AI to be in. So for that, it has parallels to me of A Closed and Common Orbit, which is the second Wayfarer's book, if you've read that. And it's that similar kind of idea of an AI finding itself in a body and not quite knowing what to do with that. But we're a bit further on with Breck for most of the story, and she's got used to it in some ways. The rest of the series is a bit different. It doesn't have the dual timeline thing. It just follows on. But I struggle to remember what happens in each book. I just had to look it up because there's books. In this book, they talk about the Presga, one of the alien species, and I knew that in one of the books, Breck meets a Presga person, and I thought it was the second book. It's actually the third book. But yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics. The next book is set between a ship and a station and a world that the station orbits. Lots more about the themes of, like, are AI people, who is civilized, what does civilization even mean? And then you kind of get the outflow of the Civil War a bit more, but that comes more towards the third book, I think. Hopefully that's not too spoilery, because we're still in the non-spoiler section. I don't think that's too spoilery.
No. I don't think so, but
spoilery unless someone's read like half the book. It's one of those things that it's not a spoiler if someone knows nothing about the book, but it's a spoiler once you've started the book. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think for me, the gender part, I got on with it pretty quickly. And then I just started. Gender's interesting in books, right? Because when we're first introduced through Breck's eyes, it's all the she's, because that's how Breck's culture worked. And then even though I was told by another character that this person actually is a he by this other planet standards, like, yeah, but I'm just thinking of them as a she now, and I can't undo it. And here I am.
Yeah. And that was
my issue wasn't so much that I found Breck unrelatable. I actually thought Breck as a character was really interesting, except for because most of Breck's existence as the ship and things like that was very much I observe and I react to my environment based on the needs of the people around me. And although we do have the character having their own motivation, they have their own motivation for this story. And it's a revenge arc, which I don't always love revenge arcs, and it's okay. But like, that's their motivation for this story. I still never, besides the fact that Breck likes songs, I never like knew much about them because they're observing. Like, it's a first person point of view book that felt like a third person book, you know, and because when they're observing, they're not thinking. We have so many scenes where Breck's stationed everywhere in the past timeline. Yeah. And they're like, this is happening here. And now I'm looking at this over here. And now we're looking at this over here, which is something I could keep track of, but like work better in a TV show. Sort of, like to have the visual cues of, oh, we're on a different sentence and we didn't say we're somewhere else directly, but now you are actually in a different part of this planet, maybe in space, maybe you're, you know. So I don't know. I think that's my thing is if I can't be that close to a character, then I need on-page strong character interactions. And none of the ones we got were able to stay for plot reasons. And the one that did develop just took most of the book to become likable.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know what's a great way, but thank you. I will say that I actually did think these were crafted well. They took most of my brain power.
We're just tired.
Always.
You get lots more interactions in the later book, so the follow-ups may appeal to you more.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I was telling Judith too, it's like, it reminds me of how when I read Gideon the Ninth, where I wasn't that confused, even though it is a confusing book if you've read Gideon the Ninth, but I also like, there would be major things happening and I did not care. It was horrible to be in that position, so I'm a little nervous. I'm going to wait for Judith to read them and let me know.
I think I'm going to do them by audiobook. I think I've discovered in myself that sci-fi and me, it needs to be through my ears.
How do you understand it better with audiobook?
I don't know.
That just makes it to me. Do you just read too fast with your eyes and audio makes it slower?
Maybe. Shh, it's fine. It's a perfectly normal thing to have a problem with. Sometimes my brain goes too speedy. We need to find someone to slow it down. It's fine.
Yeah, whatever you need. I feel like the Everywhere at Once sections for me were confusing, and I kind of get it, but also like I don't know how many different instances, ancillaries, I guess, were out and about, and so I was like, it kind of just blended together. And I was like, I kind of know what you're going for, but also like.
There's happening? 20 per part, and then there's I think an alphabet's worth of parts.
Okay, I was like, I cannot for the life of me keep track of like all of these.
We were following one Esk, and I think Esk is E.
Okay,
yeah, it's one unit, and there were 20 ancillaries per unit, and then
then the one that became Breck was the 19th unit of that one Esk,
which I think on the reread, I worked out was the replacement body
couldn't sing well.
That happens in the story. I don't know if that's a spoiler either.
That's not important whatsoever. Also, Judith, Stephanie says the audiobooks are good.
Thank you, Stephanie.
See, like the world building parts I did find interesting. Like when my brain was awake enough to follow because I think the way that the planets are crafted, like I did feel like the jungle planet was a jungle planet. The ice planet was an ice planet. When we were in the metropolis, I was in the metropolis. Like I really felt my sense of space.
Yeah.
But I was also overwhelmed because it wasn't so descriptive that I could glaze over it and just move on, which is normally my technique as a non-visual reader. Yeah. But and it was descriptive enough that I could sense it. So I'm like, but I want to be here. I want to be immersed. But it took a lot of my brain. Like, so
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a thinky book, I think is the term that we used in our chat about it. It is one that requires a lot of concentration. And I was reading this book slower than I usually read, even on rereading it, because usually I can reread something much faster than when I read it the first time. But that's because of the way the world building is done, and because of like the multi-perspective sections. Just like I had to reread them a little bit sometimes because I lost the thread of the different conversations that were happening, and I would go back and reread sections. But yeah, that's one of the parts of this book that really appeals to me. And I think I was a bit worried with the follow-up books because they didn't have the multi-timeline thing, which is something I love, and didn't have that aspect. I was worried I wouldn't enjoy them as much, but actually they're good in other ways as well, which is really good. So.
Nice. Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is like a story that, because it's not enhanced necessarily by being in the head of a character, right? Like being in the head of Burke is not like something that's required to understand what's happening. So it would be like a really good miniseries. And like you could see, like you could have the conversation happening overhead and you can see all the perspectives of this ancillary. But a fun part of this book is discovering what is this empire, what is valuable to this empire, and what is this thing that they have done with people they have conquered to make these ancillaries, and like learning all of that very slowly. And I would say it's less aggressive than Nine Fox Gambit. I think this book is way more, like it's definitely on purpose being like, you don't get to know that yet, but it will like, it info dumps a little more like directly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But it's still quite a slow burn world build, which is the type of world build I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see an adaptation of this. I don't know how you would do it, but I would love to see one.
I mean, it's a pretty straightforward revenge park. Like, it's not that dissimilar to what they're doing with Westworld or anything like that with their AI and droid stuff there. Like, I mean, I don't think there's a market for it right now. They're all on their fantasy adaptation thing at the moment. Any other non-spoiler-y thoughts? Judith, you want to show the world what you're crafting? Because that's non-spoiler.
Pleats. Teeny weeny tiny pleats. I am listening. I am, I promise.
Oh, I wasn't calling you out like a person in school. All right, I'm going to put up the spoiler banner.
Yes.
Spoilers.
Whee!
I mean, arguably, depending on how spoiler sensitive you are, maybe we already went there, but now we're extra going there.
Extra going there.
Yeah. What do you guys?
Where do we begin?
So I don't know. Like, I guess, what did you guys think of the redemption arc of one of the characters we haven't even talked about yet? What's their name? His name, her name.
Sayvarden.
Yeah. Who I think technically is male.
Yeah.
But to herself, she is she, which doesn't necessarily mean femme, but.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I lost it again now, but there's a bit where they're talking about gender. This was one of the things. So when they're on the ice planet and Breck is talking to the doctor Strigan, and the doctor says to her, she knew that she was from the Raj because no one misgenders like the Raj does. And Breck replied something like, well, I can't see under your clothes, and even if I could, that wouldn't necessarily be an accurate indicator. And I was just like, that is just, it sums up. Like, for me, like, rereading that bit, you know, sometimes something just hits you in a way, and I was like, that's so true. That's what, like, all the stuff about gender in the world comes down to. You can't tell someone's gender just by looking at them.
And that's even clearer in the Metropolis when they get to go home and they feel they're at home because they can, like, don't have to worry about gender, but also the way the clothing and the fashion's described. And literally, it's not even like here where, like, you can kind of sometimes guess someone's gender identity based off clothing in a lot of Western cultures, but that's not the case in the Metropolis. There are things that are femme and masc and mixed and matched. And it felt very freeing, even though I'm very, like, been reading a lot of Empire books. I feel like as I was reading, it's like, oh yes, another colonizing empire. What shall they do today?
Oh dear.
And I think reading it, the state of the world this week was also very
yes.
Following an annexation and then reading about what's happening in Ukraine and Russia is like,
it was a lot.
It makes you look at those themes a lot closer, I feel, than when you're just casually reading it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's lots about the Imperial Raj that I don't think we should be practicing, but the attitude towards gender is one aspect that maybe
well, and like the plot's not so like the reveal of the Emperor that is 1,000 versions, like basically its own humanoid Ancillary, is at war with itself, and that is the issue. But also it's much simpler, such as, you killed my favorite lieutenant, I just want to hurt you.
Yes.
Like that's the plot, right? Like that's and I'm just like, that is bananas. Like
and the whole thing about like which will bring us back to Saivarden, ships having favorites. I really just love that idea that like, and there's a bit at the end when Station wants Breck to leave the space station they're on, and Saivarden's like, well, I can't force you to leave. And Breck was like, well, no, but it can make things really uncomfortable. And Saivarden looks at her, because by that point she knows that Breck was her AI on her ship. And it's like, oh,
awkward.
Things were much nicer when I left.
I did see this. I thought the interview was I always like that sort of extra stuff that they do. It does that frequently, I think. Some sort of like author interview, which I always appreciate. But it's always just interesting to hear some inspirations behind choices that are made. What was I going to say? I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, I think something that I liked about this, or I thought was different about this versus other space operas that handle a lot of the similar themes of this, is the conversation about the role of religion and how that gets assimilated, co-opted, spread throughout the stars. I thought it was a really interesting conversation as well, because I feel like a lot, not all, but a lot of space operas have something else that fills the role that religion has in society, and there isn't so much a religion anymore. Or if there is a religion, it's a very small subsect. But here there really is like a very strong, like, I believe in these things. And I thought it was interesting, because I'm not used to that. I think it's just not done as often because, I don't know, for reasons, a lot of modern sci-fi associates the future with a lack of religion, I think.
Kind of speaking on that. So Breck had those like icon things, right? And like, I thought at some point, like very late in the book, somebody was like, oh, so that is actually you there, right? And she was like, yes. Did I feel like I missed all of that. And I was like, I don't know.
Really an explanation of it, because I thought that it mentions in the bit where it switches from the dual timeline to the singular timeline, she says she joins the cult. So I think it's something to do with that, and it's something to do with how she got really rich, but it doesn't really go into detail about it.
Okay, good. I was like, did I just miss anything?
That was such a rough scene.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because like, and also that was also like that whole planet where like that the leader of that temple was like, I don't want you guys to leave, because although we don't approve of ancillaries being made, we think they're better than the soldier replacements because they're at least predictable. And I think that's a thing that came up in a different sci-fi I was reading, where like part of being oppressed is also part of not having this routine or predictability. Part of it is you don't know what is the rule of the day. You don't, like, you can't know, like, maybe one day you're allowed to go about life one way and no one bothers you and you're fine, and the next day you do the exact same thing, but that person's in a mood. And so I think that's something that doesn't get brought up in books a lot. Like the book I was reading had prisons, and how prisons, like, not only is it horrible to be in a prison because you just aren't allowed to own things and you're isolated and it's just not comfortable, but you also don't know, what mood is my CO in that day? Like, there's no routine. So I thought that was
looking at Brett's comment. Sorry, Breck is the character. Breck is one of the there were 2 short stories, I haven't read them, set in this universe, and they're on Goodreads, they're numbered as 0.5 and 0.6, so they're kind of prequels. One is called Night Slow Poison, and one is called She Commands Me and I Obey. So I say I haven't read those. There is also another book set in the same universe, but with different characters on a kind of outlying world of the universe called Provenance, which is also really good and has a different way of talking about gender, which is also very clever. So, yeah.
Nice. Also, you mentioned, this book has a really good sense of self. And like one of the quotes that I did highlight is when Breck is with the doctor on the ice planet, and says, "You can kill me, you mean. You can destroy my sense of self and replace it with one you approve of." And I just thought that was like a really good moment of like, I get it. You're uncomfortable that like the person that was here before me is like, I don't know where Kayla went.
Her internet crashed. She just sent a message. Hopefully she'll be back.
But just the whole idea of like, you might not like be able to understand my sense of self, and maybe yes, sure, this body of this person that used to exist, their consciousness was killed, but I am still here, and like the ethical ambiguity and all of that was really interesting.
Yeah, the whole stuff about what makes someone a person, what makes someone civilized, and like there's a thing in the Raj language that the word civilized is the same as the word Raj. So anyone outside of their empire is automatically not civilized. And I just thought that like that conversation about how we other people that are outside of our realm, and it develops more in the other two, in the follow-on books as well. I thought is there just a really interesting discussion again with a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment about how we treat each other when we consider some people not quite human or not quite civilized. And it's been something I've been thinking about today, actually, seeing the way some news reporters are talking about the situation in Ukraine and being like, well, it's so terrible because this is like so close to home, and these are the types of people that are being affected by this are white, and that makes it worse somehow. It's like, no, it's not. It's not worse than the wars happening in other places just because it's a bit closer to us or because of what the people look like. And yeah, that's a really
and the aptitude tests and how a lot of this section was very on the nose. I didn't dislike it for that, but it was very on the nose of how elite classes think of how caste and hierarchy systems are self-imposed and perpetuated, you know. And it doesn't have to be based off obvious othering markers. It can just be based off, we're in power, want to stay in power, so here's a system that keeps that. Yeah. And then deluding yourself into thinking that there is, value in it, that like you are, what's it called? Meritocracy? Like the meritocracy of it all, that fake meritocracy that we still like have today. Everyone is still like, well, if you just worked hard enough, like that was in the first planet, right? The jungle planet. It's like, well, they're just not well off because they didn't work hard enough to do X, Y, Z, and like it ignores the conversation of opportunity and accessibility and equity and all of those fun things.
And what I like about that conversation in the cafe is that that's when you can really see how much Syvarden's changed through being in contact with Breck, because that was the attitude he used to have. They. But once she started listening to Breck and hearing all of these other elements of the history that she missed and recognizing how her attitude was wrong. And it does show that people can change if they are open-minded and willing to listen to other people's experience. So I find that scene, although the conversation is really uncomfortable, actually seeing that attitude change from Syvarden is a really kind of profound moment in the book for me.
I do wonder if that character, though, say they hadn't been frozen for 1,000 years for whatever reason, maybe that's in the short story prequel. We get glimpses of like important historical moments that have triggered the things that have happened, but her specific and Ancillary throwing her into a stasis pod, I don't think we ever really understand.
Her ship was destroyed, but I can't remember it's one of the conflicts. Her ship is destroyed.
I don't think it was the I one. I think it was maybe the G one. I don't know. There were two big ones. There was a G one and an I one, and the G one was where the Emperor splits into parts.
Yeah.
And the I one was where the evil Empire was like trying to make more ancillaries. That's all I remember about those things. I don't remember what I was going to say before I got off on that tangent. But I was wondering, if she'd just been, didn't have that 1,000-year gap, just woke up within a culture she was comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I think she felt othered. She no longer had a place. And so I think it was less their interaction with Burke and more the experience of being othered. And then you have the empathy with other people. And that's like a forced situation. It's not like, I don't know.
Well, yes and no. Obviously, because she gets involved in this, she gets addicted to this drug Kef. So she's like right at the bottom of the barrel. But you can still see when she first meets Breck, the way she interacts with Breck, thinking Breck is lesser than her. And then I think there is a distinct change, particularly after the whole bridge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a change in their relationship, but I don't think there was necessarily a huge change in their worldview. I think the biggest change came after when they're like, well, the Empire provides for all. I don't need you to buy me gloves. And then when they realize what provides for all means.
Yeah.
You know?
So I mean, it's
I think it's a well-crafted character. I think that's what a character that was raised that way would do. Mm-hmm. Like, I think her arc makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 1,000 years ago one was the one with Also, 1,000-year-old, like, getting to a civil war, that is the slowest burn civil war in all of existence. And it's just triggered because an AI component, like a part of a larger AI, was mad. And they killed their favorite lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
And they spent 20 years doing that, which, I mean, how old are they? 2,000 years old? I can't remember how old Breck is.
Yeah, about 2,000 years, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other things about this book that I like is it doesn't read slow paced to me. I mean, I said I take longer over reading it, but it didn't feel slow paced. But the timeline of it is quite extended because it's quite realistic about how long space travel does take and how long communications do take. And that's something that bothers me in sci-fi, where it's just like everything is instantaneous. If everything is too instant in sci-fi, it's like, well, no, that's just not realistic. And it comes to play a bit more in some of the later books when they're trying to send messages places. But that's something like where it takes them a year to get from the ice planet to the station, and for us it's like it's a couple of paragraphs, but that's a year of those two characters being isolated together as well, and so they have all of that time to develop that relationship more.
But we don't get to see that, and that's what annoys me. You know what I'm saying? Like with the book chooses to focus on things, and it's not even a long book. It's like 400 pages max. And it chooses to focus on cool things, but it doesn't give me enough sugar. Does that make sense? It's too healthy. It's too healthy of a book.
Yes.
I need a little bit more. Like, it's thematically rich. It is well written. The world building is exquisite, and I love the character work, but I don't love the characters because I didn't get any sugar.
You hear that, Anne? Leckie, give Angela the sugar.
You know what I mean?
That's funny.
Like, I think the reason why a lot of, like, pulpy sci-fi and fantasy can get by is because it maybe is too much of the fun stuff and not enough of the, like, quality things. But you can, like, let's be honest, I can eat ice cream for dinner. Should I? No, but I can.
Well, I think you will like the other books more. I think you'd really like Provenance, because that's a lot of character interaction.
Yeah, and I mean, I have learned through the years that that's like where I thrive, and it's one of the reasons, more blasphemy for me, that I don't love the Lord of the Rings as much as many people, because that's not where Tolkien focuses what he chooses to put on the page. It's not about, like, you see banter occasionally between characters, and I do love the Frodo Sam stuff, but like it's not it's not his focus. That's not his intention. It's not his goal, sort of thing. I'm just saying, like, this book is more fun to think about than it is to read.
Yeah. That's fair.
In terms of fun, like, and maybe you don't need to read this book for fun. Like, there are plenty of books, though, that I have loved that were not fun to read, that I've rated higher because I did have emotional or intellectual payoff that I personally didn't get here. But it's not a bad book.
No, it gives you a lot to think about. And like, okay, so this is something, going back to the whole gender thing, that I thought about. And that part that you read, Carrie, that about like the whole misgendering conversation, that also stood out to me. But it was kind of interesting to think about, because like, you know, as a society now, I feel like we don't want to, well, I mean, some people are stupid and shitty, but generally we don't want to misgender people. And like, sometimes that happens for Breck, but it's not like intentional. And I felt like that was like a weird kind of spin on misgendering, where it was like, well, really, we can't, like, from Breck's culture, and like that quote you read, you know, it's like, we can't tell what gender somebody is based on what they look like. And it's like, she doesn't want to misgender people, but it happens. I don't know. Is anything that I'm saying making sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think Breck's a really good example of someone taking critique with grace. I mean, I don't know how much of that is Breck being an AI and just used to having to listen to humans tell them they're to do X, Y, Z or whatever. But the whole idea of mistakes happen, you do things, and then you just process and then correct in the future. Humans as a species are very defensive individuals. And I just think Breck's not.
Yeah.
You know?
I think Breck tries hard. And like, with, you know, some of these languages, Breck tries to pick up on clues with like, okay, like, what pronoun did you use there? Or like, you know, what, you know, I don't know.
Well, and something even more complex than that. I remember Breck talking about, like, it's not just gender, it's who are you related to? Are you the grandmother, the mother? Like, it was even more involved in the language than that, which does happen in many languages.
Yeah.
Not as prevalent in the language we're speaking right now, but
yeah. And it seemed like particularly on the ice planet, the second person pronouns were gendered as well. So it sounded like you could misgender someone by using the you pronoun, like, which that just, like, a language that has that many inflections. And how many languages does Breck know at this point as well?
Like,
I mean,
so
does she know them because she's an AI, or has she had to learn them? And
yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that Breck also, like, there was like a scene when Breck was still in Ancillary and someone was like, you shouldn't smile like that. It's too realistic. It makes us unhappy. Like, because Breck's like really good at blending in. And then once Breck's on the station, like, okay, I have to hide from the station. The station cannot know that I'm an Ancillary. And like all of the thought that went to every single one of their decisions. And then realizing, oh, but the Emperor already knows. Yeah. Like,
like the fact that she couldn't not react to hearing her own name.
Yeah.
And, like, that it just got me in the feels. Like,
Judith, do you have a thought? I know we've all three been talking a bunch.
I've just realized how much of this book did not stay in my brain. Because you keep saying things, I'm like... I'm just not wired for sci-fi. This is the thing. I'm not wired for it.
No, I feel like, yeah, some sci-fi books work better for me than others. Like, I feel like with a lot of sci-fi, I need to have, well, shit, I don't know, like more of a plot-driven book. But then I was going to say, like, I love Becky Chambers, and I would not describe those as plot-driven books. Those are definitely character. I don't know what it is that I want in my sci-fi, but like sometimes I like am kind of picky about it, and I can't seem to articulate what it is that I'm looking for.
I'm always harsher on rating sci-fi than I am fantasy because I do think fantasy, I allow it to have more fun and be less strict when it does like silly things that I'm just like, well, that's a plot hole, but it's fine.
Yeah.
And I think sci-fi, because sometimes, more often than not, and like this does exist in fantasy, they're just not the books I pick up apparently. Sci-fi can be more of that intellectual, reflective thinking space, which is harder to have a pleasurable experience consuming unless it really hits it just like right on that edge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But also Marlene had a good question. How do we feel about the Empress? the
I think
ruler.
at one point it's mentioned that the Lord of the Raj is male.
In a country where no one's referred to as male.
I seem to remember that as well.
I thought of them as a woman the entire time. Everyone was a woman because my brain is binary and it's dumb.
No, I think there was another conversation with the doctor, and Breck tries to remember what pronouns the doctor uses. But
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. She, he, whoever. Yeah, the whole kind of idea. So I can't remember if it's clarified in this book or in one of the later books, but it's clones as well. Ooh. So all the Ananda Minais look the same, which is why Breck can't tell which one is.
That wasn't confirmed, and we did have a kid, but that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it must come up in one of the later ones then.
Yes.
I agree, Stephanie, that no one else here has this problem, but I did.
No, I've read the first 4 of those books, so I definitely had that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That confusion as well.
It was an early clone. It hadn't grown up yet.
Yeah, so this is a clone in the early stages, but still has all of the knowledge and memories of the Lord of the Raj. So I find
I don't like that.
Okay. So the idea is, right, suddenly one Ask Breck, whatever, shows up being like, you guys are at war with yourselves and you're ignoring it. It's literally the definition of you not going to therapy, right? I'm going to force you to confront this thing you didn't want to look at. And then they're like, oh no, this memory is going to upload to all the rest of us out there. We need to stop that. And the solution, the easy solution, is destroy the station. Just get rid of it. Just buy. Like, as the Emperor, is there not a simpler way?
But that's like the reason why Justice of Torin was destroyed was because of the same.
Yes, I think they're overreactions. I think the Emperor's been around a while. They should be better than this. I think me, as a 29-year-old humanoid, not in the future, I could think of a better plan. Give me 5 minutes. Like, I think I could. Yes, but I do. So a lot of this also is hampered by a thinky sci-fi I really love is the Texcalon duology, and I've been trying not to mention it just because this is about Ancillary. But the Texcalon duology is very thinky and very thematic and very well structured, and I love the characters and I love it. And I didn't love this, and it's just And they have very similar themes. It's not as much gender or religion, but the civilization. What is a human? How does memory work? But yeah, no, it is very much like 8 Antidote is a lot like the kid for Anan. How do you say this name? Ananders.
That's Anander is how I pronounced it.
Ananders. I don't know. I've been saying Animander Rake actually every time I read it.
Yeah,
I have done this every time, and I've moved on. So, but I'm just saying, like, and maybe it's realistic, you know, they're so split and dysfunctional that they have to just go off the cuff in the moment, but they are like not who I want ruling anything.
No. Oh no. Definitely not.
Anna, that's absurd. Okay.
Anna Ander?
Yeah, Katie said something about like the rhythm of it's really important, or something about all the names having specific rhythms. But she's downstairs and I can't get her, so I can't get her to explain it for us.
Stephanie, I was judging you on the Friday reading sprints too about this.
That's true.
Just
yes,
so
we were wondering if you could feel the shame kind of headed your direction. Good shame, though.
Oh, yeah. Friendly shame.
I think we should rename the group chat to just be Friendly Shame.
So, yeah. But I mean, I do think this has a lot of the things that I love in sci-fi. I just think that, like, because of how my brain works, and it's a very me thing and not the book thing, because it took me so much work to obtain certain information, but I wasn't having fun while doing it, I needed a little spice.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was the author's goal, and maybe that'll be better in other books. But I'm going to wait for Judith to tell me. I trust Judith.
Oh.
I mean, I don't trust you to
bold claim. But yeah, I just finished it 5 minutes ago, and I think there were characters who did something.
I'm just gonna ask, how are the vibes?
The vibes, yes. There were vibes. I think thinking about it, I think it's also probably one of those books where on a reread you know what's important, so you can pick up on it, which I found with Machineries of Empire, which I've just done a reread of, knowing, okay, these are the people I need to care about, and this is the person I want to pay attention to in this. Which again, I think in like a TV setting, you have more of that very obvious like steering. Ooh, don't pull my headphones
Yeah, I mean,
out
I
as
think
well.
on reread for me it could increase a little bit, but like I wasn't confused. Like I've been pretty up to date on the entire plot of this book. At no point did I not know where or when I was, and I know that is confusing. But I've been reading Malazan for the past year, so like this was so straightforward.
Yeah,
You've run the gauntlet.
Like there will be moments where I'm like, oh wait, we're talking. Why is this 1,000 years? And this is, and then I did a little math in my head. I'm like, okay, whatever. We're about like I don't do it well. I say the G space is where this happens. The I space is when that's how I do it. But so I don't know for me, mainly because Breck's one friend dies and they're not even friends. It's a servant master relationship. And then they're getting a new puppy that they don't want in the form of Sarandon or whatever her name is. And then they're given a whole new ship to be friends with, and they don't even want that. Like, Breck's a very isolated individual and does not want friends.
I'm curious, like, yeah, I don't know if I necessarily want to continue the series, but at the same time, I'm curious, like, what Breck's relationship with the new ship would be like moving forward.
It's so good. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sure that would be really fun.
That kind of reminds me of the dynamic between like Murderbot and some of the other AIs in that series, which is something I really love. So I'm like, well, shit, would I also really love that here?
I mean, I think that would be really cool. Like, because I mean, the things I've been missing are the character interactions.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, Judith. You said Katie didn't like Nine Fox Gambit because of the Kel, but really loves Ancillary Justice. Is it just the difference that one are people and one's AI? Because they both are very similar.
So I don't think it's, and this is going to make no sense to anyone who hasn't read Machineries of Empire, so I will be speedy and then elaborate in a voice note to Angela later. I think it's more to do with the setup. It's literally to do with the setup of the book and the expectation that the book sets out. It's nothing to do with the actual world building setting.
Okay, because when you first talked to me about it, you said that Katie didn't like the whole Kel mind thing.
Yeah, I don't think I was listening to her very well when she explained that to me.
Like, when I'm reading
I'm coming off as a terrible person in this live. I'm just like, I don't remember the book and I hate my wife.
I'm just saying, like, hive mind military things are super common in sci-fi.
Yeah.
Another person liking it. So Marlene, I believe Judith is continuing. I don't know if Carrie's continuing on reread, but Carrie has read them. And Kayla's an iffy, and I'm depending on what Judith says.
Yes, I read them the first time from the library, and I have just bought the next two. I had some book vouchers. I just bought the next two so I can carry on my reread because I'm enjoying it so much.
If I wasn't having to read Ruin of Kings next month, staring at Judith, maybe I would, but I can only handle so many confusing things in my brain at once.
See, that one, I really actually did like The Ruin of Kings. I need to continue that series, but I mean, there's a lot of strange choices, I think, with the narrative structure, but I feel like I didn't have problems following that. But anyway,
I don't think it'll be that much of an issue. It's just more like I want to read that, and I have to read Malazan next month. I have a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
some
I have 2 3-star series right now that I tentatively want to continue, and neither of them are on my TBR next month, but I have them. It's Faithful and the Fallen, and now this, and they're very different books. Like, I think Malice is objectively a rough, not good book. This is a good book that I had a rough time with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, question. So, is Provenance just like a standalone book in this world? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and it's set on like a fringe world, but it has, I think it's the Presga. It's one of the alien species involved, and it follows. It's a couple of years since I read it, so let me try and get it right. So it's like the society is based on adoption, and children. So there's four types of gender pronouns. So you have he, she, there for like the third or kind of non-binary gender. But then children and people you don't know are referred to as E, and M. The idea being until someone tells you which gender they are, you don't know, you refer to them. That's the most polite way. And children are the same, because the children choose their gender when they reach adulthood, and they can choose the new name. And that's one of the really cool aspects of that book. And it's about this, the central character is like trying to find her place within the society, and she's the less favored sibling of a really important official who is about to name which one of her children is going to be her what's the word, heir.
Yeah.
I wonder how
and
we
then
get
there's
to
like a
this
murder
point,
mystery element as well, and
Ooh.
there's kind of a rebel who is the child of another important figure who's been sent for re-education and is coming back. Yes, it does. Yes. So you can read it as a standalone. I read it after I'd read the first 3 books, and it makes a bit more sense because it takes place slightly afterwards. But I wouldn't say you have to read it in order. I can't remember how spoilery it is for the Ancillary books, but if you're not that fussed about finishing the Ancillary series anyway, maybe read Provenance next. And if you like that, then maybe go back. The rest.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like what you just described sounds a lot more appealing to me. So I don't know. Yeah. Who knows what I will do?
I was wondering, so we're in this futuristic society somewhere. We don't know how far away from our now, right? Like, but it's far, and we somehow ended up with an empire that is very gender progressive, and I don't know how we get there from here.
And tell us how we get there. Not the empire part. We don't want that.
Me in the United States is a good. We have our own issues right now. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I liked that she was used as the gender neutral just because it was easy for sentence structure. Although in real life, I like saying the singular they. I'm very used to that now. I mean, I can adjust to whatever someone tells me to do. But I don't like reading the singular they because I haven't gotten enough practice because there aren't that many books that use it. But whenever I read the singular they, it's not the same as saying it. And then I'm like, oh, I have to reread this sentence because it wasn't a group. It was a person. Like, it gets really hard. So this was like sentence structure wise easy, even though it did force me to, not force me, I forced upon the characters femme identities because my brain is bad. So yeah. Any other good, bad, in the middle thoughts?
I kind of now want to go back and reread. Is it the Raven Tower? What's it called?
That is right.
I haven't read that yet.
Because I read it a good few years ago, like a good few years ago now. And all I really remember is a similar feeling of, well, that was really weird. Great. But like in a very positive sense.
Yeah.
So now I kind of want to go back and read that again. And then also reread these. And also reread Text Clan. What if I just threw out all of my TBR and just read what I feel like reading?
Yeah, it's the way to go, honestly. I'm here for this. I support this.
I'm slightly cross at myself because I'd planned to finish reading Machineries of Empire before starting the reread of this, but just time didn't work for me. So I've still got I've got Revenant Gun to read. I'm going to probably do that before I let myself carry on my reread of this. I have the Raven Tower, but I haven't read it yet. So I need to read that soon. And then when I was ordering my books today, she's got 2 more books coming out over the next 2 years, which is very exciting. So hopefully, yeah. Well, I love her writing style. I've loved every book I've read of hers that she's written so far. So I'm
trying to think if Anne Leckie had a short. They did in The Mythic Dream, but I can't remember which story it was.
Yeah, shit, I can't remember either.
Because I think I actually didn't have I think Anne Leckie and I might just not get along writing style to brain communication streams.
That's fair.
Because I'm trying to remember which one it was. Bring back mood.
Yes, I'm with you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think Raven Tower is their fantasy.
Yes, Raven Tower is her first fantasy book.
Yeah. I wish for anthologies it was easier to find like the table of contents.
Yeah. I also I found my notes, but I apparently didn't write the author down at all. So that's good job,
not helpful.
Not helpful at all.
And the images on Amazon are useless. That's annoying. Anyways.
Yes.
Wait, I can just type probably Anne Leckie, The Mythic Dream.
The Justified. Oh, that was the one with the Egyptian.
Oh, yeah. I didn't like that one. Oh.
Yeah, I think I did. Yes, no, I definitely.
One where I was like, I like the ideas, but I feel nothing. That was exactly what I thought.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
there we go.
It's not her. It's me, or me and her. We're just not.
We're not working out.
It's not you. It's us. It's somehow even worse.
In case anyone cares.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, such wisdom.
Yep.
Also, no, mood reading is the devil. Strongly disagree.
I think here's the thing. I like the idea of mood reading, but how does one know their mood?
Right.
Yeah,
what am I feeling?
Yeah, there's sometimes where I'm like, I don't know what to pick up.
Because, like, let me tell you, today I had to pick up the last book on my TBR, forced TBR, and apparently I'm in the mood for it. But I didn't know that before I started it. I didn't know I was in the mood for Icelandic folklore horses today. That's not a mood box.
Okay, what is that? What are you reading?
Is it good? Is it good?
I'm liking It's All the Horses of Iceland by a Canadian author. And definitely, if you want to know where you are, have a Google up, because uses all of the old Icelandic Nordic names for locations in Europe. And I kind of wanted to know where I was when they were referring to places. And has old empires that don't exist anymore and stuff like that. No, yeah, it's just 100 pages folklore. That's it. If you don't want folklore, don't pick it up. I think that's the mood, but I didn't know it was folklore till I picked it up.
Oh, I didn't realize it was so short. Okay.
Yeah, it's a novella from Tor.com.
Gotcha.
Yep. But again, did I know I was in the mood for that? No.
Yeah, sometimes I choose wrong, and then I'm like, well, shit. This didn't work out. But
this is how you end up with 20 things on your currently reading shelf.
I think I'm better at knowing what I'm in the mood for TV and movies. But I think that's also because I don't consume as widely.
Mm-hmm.
So. Kayla, you want to talk about next month's book?
Yeah,
Please
so
because I can't remember what it is.
Borderline by Michelle Baker.
Let me type that in the chat.
Yeah, here.
Borderline?
I'll put it in the private chat, and then you can.
Do that.
Yes, so this is adult urban fantasy, and I know Nikki read the what? Oh my God, what in the world am I trying to say right now? Synopsis. Thank you, Self. I don't know why we struggled to. Anyway, so this does, I think, have some potential content warnings just so people are aware. But basically, the main character, Millie, lost her legs and I'm just going to look on Goodreads. She lost her legs and filmmaking career in a failed suicide attempt. And I think she has borderline personality disorder. But anyway, so just when she's sure the credits have rolled on her life story, she gets a second chance with the Arcadia Project, a secret organization that polices the traffic to and from a parallel reality filled with creatures straight out of myth and fairy tales. For her first assignment, she's tasked with tracking down a missing movie star who happens to be a nobleman of the Sealy court. So to find him, she'll have to smooth talk Hollywood power players and uncover the surreal and sometimes terrifying truth behind the glamour of Tinseltown. But stronger forces than just her inner demons are sabotaging her process. And if she fails to uncover this conspiracy behind the noble's disappearance, not only will she be out on the streets, but the shattering of a centuries-old peace could spark an all-out war between worlds. No pressure.
I liked Judith's dance while you were talking. That's why I laughed. I'm sorry. Judith was just going like this.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It is, for those who are on script, it is on script, which is what I was just doing, is saving it. So,
perfect.
Yay.
And that'll happen eventually, end of March, early April. And we'll be voting for books soon. So if you don't follow the Twitter and you want to have powers, follow the Twitter. I don't know. That's all I have. I am glad we read this, Carrie. Just so you know.
Yeah, me too. I'm happy that we chose this.
And I know it's not a book that everyone loves. So I'm like, it doesn't bother me. I love that I love it. I love that Marlene really enjoyed it. And she didn't know about it, so that's great. I'm so glad that it was picked for that readathon as one of the group books a couple of years ago, because otherwise I never would have heard of it. And so I'm really pleased that I've been able to encourage more people to read it, even though you didn't end up loving it as much as I do.
I'm glad that it kind of primed the way for you to like Machineries of Empire, because I don't know how Machineries of Empire goes if you haven't read this book first.
Bad.
know.
Oh wait,
could
no,
have gone
hang on,
great,
Machineries
could
of
have gone
Empire.
poorly,
Sorry,
I
I'm
don't know.
confusing it. I'm confusing it. I got confused with the what? Oh my god, what is it like? The Memories of Empire. That's what I keep confusing. Yes, the title with the series name.
Memories of Empire. God,
Is
now
that
I
right?
A memory called Empire.
It's a memory called
Okay,
Empire.
Jesus, that one.
it's-
Yes,
it's-
thank
it's
you.
a
Clearly, I
Texalon
cannot
world.
keep these things right in my mind.
Yeah,
They're
and
kind of
They, all
combined.
three of those have similar themes, and it's
Yeah.
like space opera themes are, well, unless you're Star Trek, like very few choose to take the actually we're just all at peace and everything's fine and we're not conquering approach. Very few choose to imagine that future. Maybe it's less interesting for plot. I don't know. They do exist, but this one chose to go more the let's look into imperialism and the effects of that route, which I did actually like for once, seeing the after effects and a point where they decided to stop annexation. Like, I think that's an interesting lens into an empire. And I think it does show like how it was related to like the Romans and how that does actually then lead to kind of the decline of that empire. And like, I think that's really interesting. Again, so much. I can just say everything was really interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yay, Scribd. Thanks everyone who was in the chat.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here, everyone. And I'm going to hit the end broadcast button.
Yeah.